So, nonverbal um, communication is so vital for us. We have to be aware of how we come across. And a lot of research shows that most experts have really talked about 70 to 90% of all communication is nonverbal. And we also have the digital world to think about as well. So our facial expressions, our gestures, our posture, our tone of voice are powerful communication skills. So I'm going to bring in our international speaker. I'm so excited. Adrienne Carter has agreed to be part of this. She's in the UK, and I've only met her through LinkedIn, but we connected, and she is amazing. The work she's doing is absolutely amazing. So I'd like to invite Adrienne to come in.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for being here. So we're going to jump right into our conversation and spend a lot of time because you have so much to share here. So you've dedicated your career to understanding body language and especially the facial expressions, because I know you do a lot of work around that, and consumer psychology. So what inspired you to go down this path?
Well, I'd love to say there was a big master plan, but actually there wasn't. There's just been steps throughout my life that have led to different things and led me to where I am today. So as a child, the people around me were quite volatile and you never knew what quite mood they were going to be in. So I learned very quickly as a child that sometimes it was better to be seen and not heard, but to be very aware of what was going on. And then when I left school and I started working, I worked with people and I was in market research and I trained to be a counsellor and psychotherapist. And I realised that everything I do, I love to be with people, understand what they do, why they do it, and really dig into that. While I was training to be a counsellor and psychotherapist, I was introduced to someone who got a small behavioural research agency, and that really set me on to the path that has ended where I am today, although the path has not ended, don't think that. And I understood that people have got lots to tell us and lots of information inside them that sometimes we're not very good at getting out of them, but understanding what they do and why they do it was really interesting to me. And so I focused on the behaviour, body language, and then specialised in facial expressions, as you said, Jean. And that really has led me to the Face Whisperer Days, which I've been for the last 10 years. And it's all about understanding people better than sometimes they even know themselves.
Yeah, we're sometimes open books when we look at
Mm.
our faces and what we're thinking, how we're moving, and what we're talking about. So yes, that's so great. So when did you first realize that, the body language has such a power in business success?
So I'm going to take you back to a time I was in Germany. It was about 17 years ago. It was when I was in the market research world and I was general manager of a global research company working with a global client. And we talked about behavior all the time. And, they really bought into the methodologies that we used at that time. But one day we were out in the field and I was with the client, lady client, and we walked into a shop. There were some shops nearby the offices that we were going to, and there were some shops. And we walked into this shop. And as we walked in, she put her hands in her pockets. We walked around the shop. When we came out, I just said to her, it was a throwaway comment. It's one of those things that you say and then don't realise actually it changed the whole course of my life and became a very good thing for our business. I just said to her, you went into that shop because you really wanted to go in, but you had no intention of buying anything, did you? And she just looked at me and she said, well, how do you know that? I said, because as you walked in, your body language told me. You put your hands in your pockets, you didn't touch anything, you came out, you nodded lots of times, like you smiled a few times, but you didn't buy anything or touch anything. She said, no, we're saving for our first house, me and my partner, and money's really tight. So I love all the stuff in there and I'd love to spend. And I didn't even realise I'd put my hands in my pockets. And she became an absolute raving fan after that small conversation, which led to massive success for our business. And, it really brought home to me that body language is so important. She hadn't realized she'd done that movement and she hadn't thought all that through. She just went to the shop, but she knew she loved it, but she hadn't thought through that actually, I'm not going to buy anything. I don't want to touch anything. I know if I touch something, I might be a step closer to buying it. So it was a really interesting experience. And I just thought, I've got lots of these little things in my head and I don't really talk about it and never say anything. And I became a much more focal part of the business then with the behavioral stuff because people are fascinated about themselves and about other people. So that led to some great success, both monetarily and commercially.
Yeah, it's so common that we will not be aware of the nonverbal messages that we're
Mm,
giving to others that can be really impacting our professional lives. So,
absolutely.
yeah, so let's go a little deeper into that.
Mm,
How about thinking about the body language and the impact to women and especially their professional presence, and all the women that are listening today are working in very male-dominated industries, and how does that really impact with our body language? What are we saying unconsciously?
yeah. So I go back to the days when I was general manager of the research company. It was a very male dominated world. Clients were mostly male. The team I worked with them mostly male. And I thought to fit in and to be this professional woman, I had to act like a male too. My daughter actually used to say to me when she was a young teenager, she used to say, "Mom, you sound like a man and you walk like a man." And I was like, I never, at the time, I was like, don't be ridiculous. Now looking back with all my experience and my knowledge, I did. I thought I had to walk, talk, and act like a man to fit into that world. Since starting my own business, and you have a lot of freedom when you start your own business, I still work in a male-dominated world. What I know to be the truth now, and which is very effective, is actually confidence and authenticity are the keys to making it in a male-dominated world. When we're confident, people treat us differently. We treat ourselves differently. And when we're authentic, who we really are, I'm a woman, I am female, and it's okay to be a female. We don't have to dial down our femininity. We can be as feminine as we want to be, and that works for us, that's authentic to us. Now, I'm not talking about going OTT unless that's who you authentically are, but to make it in any world, male or female, confidence and authenticity are the keys.
Yes. Um, and it's so and we do that. I know I've been in male-dominated industries myself, and I understand you walk different, you hold yourself different, and then you start feeling that that's not really who I am,
Yeah,
and that starts eroding your confidence.
it does. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. It doesn't support it. And because we have to put on this facade, and that takes a lot of energy to do. That takes a lot of energy to do. So let's kind of talk a little bit about a couple of body language tips that any woman can apply and boost her professional presence.
Okay. So number one is slow down your walk and your talk. Now, what I mean by that is oftentimes women have got so much on their plates. They've got home to juggle, they've got their work to juggle, they've got family, they've got friends, they've got lots of different parts of their lives that they're trying to juggle. So we're always on the run. Slow it down. Slow down your walk, slow down your talk. Because when we do that, we come across as more confident. Yes, we still might have a million things to do, but actually just slow it all down because the perception then is actually we're in control, even if we're not underneath it. We look more like we are. And there's that saying, fake it till you make it, which I don't always believe in. But sometimes when we just slow ourselves down, we actually start to feel more confident and in control ourselves too. So that's number one. Number two is own your space. A lot of women don't own their own space. We try and make ourselves smaller and, fitting in, but actually own your space. And I mean by that, own your own body language space. It's okay to gesture. It's okay to use your hands if that's what you authentically do. If you've got office space, use that space. Don't try and put yourself into a tiny little box. Use the space you've got around you. When you're traveling on aeroplanes, on trains, you know, own your space. Oftentimes, as women, we're very polite and we move ourselves over to get out of the way of the next person. But it's okay to just actually sit in your space and owning your space. We look more confident, we feel more confident because we're allowing ourselves to be who we really are. And my third tip is get really good at eye contact. Now, lots of people, not just women, are not good at eye contact. And the more you don't like yourself, the worse you will be at eye contact. So I always say to my clients, if I'm doing any training with them, get comfortable with just looking at yourself. So even if it's just for 5 seconds in a mirror in the morning, not while you're cleaning your teeth or brushing your hair or putting your makeup on. I mean, really look at yourself in the mirror and not with a view to judging yourself, with a view to, okay, this is me today. And then what you gradually allow yourself to do is, I like my eyes. I've got nice eyes, haven't I? Oh, my hair looks nice today. And start having those positive conversations with yourself, because this in here, the internal talk we do to ourselves affects out here. So I start with 5 seconds a day, get comfortable. When that's comfortable, go to 10 seconds. When that's comfortable, go to 20 seconds and build it up. Might take weeks, might take months. Some of my clients have, 6 months later and said, right, I'm at a minute and a half. That is fine. But what they notice is when they get really good at giving eye contact, is they notice that people respond to them differently. And it's a really great relationship builder. Did you know, Mary Jean, that you can build a relationship and get someone to fall in love with you if you talk to them and look at them with deep eye contact for about 3 to 4 minutes? I think the science says, the research says. So that tells us how important eye contact is.
That's amazing. I have to think about that because maybe having that eye contact is not just for romance, but also for business as well,
Absolutely.
because now they really like me. They really
Yes,
think I have something to give. I think that's
yes,
great. So,
absolutely.
can we spend a little time talking about the digital world? And
Yes.
you're like the face whisper. So
Yeah.
you know about facial expressions. And then when we're in the digital world, that's basically what people are seeing. Maybe a
Yeah.
little bit of the shoulders, maybe a little of the hands, but
Yeah.
just the face. Could you give some tips on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So a smile is a big thing. Smile as soon as you come onto a Teams or a Zoom meeting or a video call, make the first thing you do a smile. I always say to people as well, when you go onto calls, always get on a couple of minutes early if you can, and leave that time to have that chit chat that you would normally do when you walk into an office or you meet somebody for a meeting. You always have a couple of minutes for chit chat while the coats come off or while you get yourself settled. Do the same on your video calls too. If you can, you'll notice that today during our talk, you'll see my hands at various points on my face, on my chin, or, you know, you'll see them. We trust people more when we see their hands. That's a fact. It's been scientifically proven. So if you can on the calls, just make sure your hands are visible at certain points. So you don't have to be jazz hands like this the whole time, but just every now and then put your hands in because we trust people more. So you started to build that relationship. Um, Chin level when you're on a video call, so many times, and I even see it on the news when someone's being interviewed and they're not in the studio, you see them either looking down or looking up, and that's just terrible. Confidence is what we want. Chin level is confidence. When we're looking down on someone, we could be metaphorically looking down on them. When we're looking down, we also look less confident. So we don't want to look chin up. I don't wear my glasses on screen because they're bifocals and I end up looking down the bottom. I don't want to look arrogant or overconfident. Chin level is where it's at.
Mm. Yeah, and that's sometimes difficult for me even to do because I tend to come down and look down, and yeah, that's not the best. And I get reminded that from my tech guy.
Yes.
So, um, thanks for that. Now let's move into maybe a couple of tips if we're in a meeting, because a lot of times an in-person
Mm.
meeting. A lot of times we are now having to come back into the office, and we've been after maybe a year or two, we've been sitting in our yoga pants
Mhm.
and only being dressed up from the waist up. So now we have to come back into the office and
Yeah.
make ourselves, especially women, make ourselves feel that we are part of the group, that we have something to contribute. So what
Mm.
tips can you give on that type of thing?
And I would say be intentional about how you turn up and with your body language. You know, when I go to meetings, I'm depending on what sector of industry that I'm going to, I will dress to fit in with them. So when I go to a financial institute, I'm very smart because they are all suited and booted still here in the UK anyway. When I go to a marketing or an advertising industry sector, I'm a bit more casual, but still smart casual. But it's about being intentional. You know, if you go to work in your very casual clothes and you're not, what's the word, dressed for the day, as I like to say it. If you're not dressed for the day, sometimes people perceive you as very casual and you may act more casual. So even when I'm working at home in my desk, I could wear anything. I dress for the day because I'm being intentional. When I go to the office, I'm even more intentional because I'm there. People are reading things about me, about my body language, about my behavior, how I'm feeling, how I've turned up, how I'm dressed. So for me, it's about being intentional when we go back to the office and have those conversations, greet people with a smile, make sure it's genuine. You're pleased to see them. Have those little conversations. Don't make it all about work because we build relationships with people that we know, we like, and we trust. And that comes from those side conversations that aren't all about the task in hand.
Great tips. Thank you. So now let's take a look at how we can understand body language and emotions and how that can help us build that strong personal brand. You kind of talked a little bit about it, having the right dress for the right time, dressing for the day. And I always do too when I'm on Zoom.
Yeah.
I want to be on Zoom like I'm professional. Um, but if you can give us some examples of that too.
Yeah, it's about becoming self-aware. I mean, how aware are the ladies that are watching this? How aware are you of your own body language? I always say to people, either film yourself, and if you don't want to do that, you feel too uncomfortable to do that, ask a trusted friend or a trusted colleague, someone you trust, their opinion, not someone who's unkind, but not someone who's also overly kind. How do I come across? What are my behaviors? Do I have a habit that I do all the time? It might be someone that fiddles with something and they don't even realize they're fiddling. And it could be for a very good reason they're fiddling, but people often perceive that as nervousness. So what do you do? What is your behavior? Be conscious of the messages you're sending. I like to fiddle. Now, if I'm on Zoom or I'm in a meeting, I will often have a pen in my hand and I'll take notes. If I'm in a meeting and it's in person, I'll often take notes, but making sure I keep good eye contact too. I'll make those notes because it stops me fiddling with anything else. When you're presenting, how do you present yourself? Are you stood on, one leg crossed over another leg? That gives you an unstable base. Put your feet firmly on the ground, about the width of your hips firmly on the ground. You give yourself a strong, firm foundation. It's these little tips that just make those differences. But I would say become very self-aware. I say to people sometimes, film yourself when you're sat at your desk at your office. Just put your Zoom on and just film yourself, or Teams, whichever way you prefer, and just film what you do. You'll soon get a really good indication after about 20 minutes, half an hour, of the things that you naturally do, because there's maybe some tweaks in there that you might just want to change, such as the fiddling, such as the leg bouncing. People do that, can be because they are neurodivergent and they've got lots of excess energy, or they're impatient, or they're bored. Body language there isn't one size that fits all. Oftentimes, in certain contexts, different things can mean different things. But until you know what you do, you can't tweak that behavior to make sure it's optimized.
Yeah, and I think also is understanding understanding the circumstances so that what's going on. I know when I first started doing a lot of training in the company I worked for, was in the training, learning and development area. My very first endeavor was, watching, kind of like participating, but more observing of what was going on. And there was one person in the audience that just was like this the
Mm,
whole time. And I was thinking, wow, he is really not happy with what's going on. And
mm,
I started really going, wow, he looks almost angry. And then after the presentation, he came up to the presenter and said, thank you. That was really interesting. And
mm,
so sometimes we do project our own
yeah,
thoughts of what someone else's body language is.
yeah,
So I think, bringing it into context is really important. Um,
absolutely.
any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I had a client a few years ago. She said to me, I just can't bond with the team, Adrienne. Any ideas what might be going wrong? And I said to her, Claire, can I be really honest with you? And she said, yeah. And I said, no, no, can I be really honest with you? And she said, yeah, yeah. I said, you've got one of those faces that looks very stern and is actually oftentimes called resting bitch face. And her team who were around me when she asked me this question went, oh. And she said, do you know what, Adrienne? She said, my sister says that to me all the time. And I've never really thought about it in a work context. And I said, maybe you just need to explain to the team that actually that's your processing and thinking phase and how we're going to work this out. And she said, but that's exactly what it is. And I said, oftentimes it is. I've found that to be true for lots of people. Now the team have permission to say, Claire, is that your thinking phase or are you cross with us?
Mhm.
Change their whole relationship, because now they had permission to say to her, Claire, are you cross? Or Claire, are you thinking? Because she was most of the time just thinking about how she could use the information the team were presenting to her. But her sister had told her this, but she just thought it was her sister being funny. So this self-awareness is so important. If you do feel uncomfortable in your clothes, for example, tell people around you, sorry, I'm fidgeting a lot today, but my jumper or my blouse is really itchy and I'm really uncomfortable. Because when we do these behaviours, like you've just said, people perceive it as one thing. It could be nothing to do with that. So if there is something going on for you, say it. When I go to present in front of an audience, I always road test the clothes I wear before I present to make sure that they're not uncomfortable and that I feel fully comfortable and fully confident wearing them. Because if I'm not, I won't come across how I want to be perceived either.
So, if there's one thing you'd love every woman who's listening to this to
Mm.
remember about body language, what would that be?
Your body language is your silent advocate. Before you even say a word, your body language has spoken for you and about you. People call it a soft skill. It's actually a vital skill to master it, and it's easily mastered. You start with that step of self-awareness and then tweaking and understanding what true confidence looks like, getting to like yourself. So important. The photographs you use for your personal brand in business, whether they're on the website about the team or your LinkedIn profile. Are you smiling? Happy to be there? I see so many professional women who are very serious, looking at the camera very seriously, but there's no warmth there. And actually, confidence, true confidence, is a warm and approachable emotion, feeling. So, let that warmth come through. Start to be happy with who you really are. And if there's things that you don't want, change them. Work to change them. Might be small steps, but go in the direction that you want to go.
And is there, like, just quickly, a favorite tip or technique you would like them to start using?
Look out for the one-sided shoulder shrug. The one-sided shoulder shrug, either for yourself or for someone else, tells you everything. When you say
Mhm.
something and that shoulder goes, just one side, not both sides, when that shoulder goes, you know you have no confidence in what you've just said. That's probably not going to happen. Or if somebody else does it, they have no confidence. So watch out for those one-sided shoulder shrugs.
great tip. I've never heard that. So that's a really good
Mm.
tip. I'm going to watch that. So if you have something or to offer or people want to connect with you, can you mention something
Yeah.
on that? Mhm.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is a great way to connect with me, or TikTok if you've got any ladies that want to over on TikTok. And if anyone would like a free session, then they can book in and I'll happily do a 30 to 45-minute session to help them optimize their own body language, or if they've got any questions about relationships or interactions that are going on around them.
Thank you. This has been so insightful, and I really appreciate you being here. And I am so happy that we connected.
Thank you, Mary Jane G.